ASU. Well, the word is spreading about a popular place at Arkansas State University, the Bird Observatory. Located in between the railroad tracks just off the Marionberry Parkway, the Bird Observatory is a place where research happens in the areas of bird conservation and discovery of the natural world. Community engagement also occurs as many local schools come to the observatory to learn about the different birds that take flight in Arkansas. Well, joining me to talk about this is Associate Professor of Ecology, Dr. Johnathan Boves, and Ph.D. student in Molecular Biosciences, Alix Matthews. Thank you both for joining me here on A-State Connections.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate y'all being here. First of all, I want to ask about how you all came to Arkansas State. Dr. Boves, we'll start with you.
Sure, yeah. I grew up outside of Chicago in the suburbs, and growing up I had a forest preserve nearby, and I spent as much time as I could there and grew to love nature, and I always wanted to do something in biology, and especially in field biology. Went to University of Illinois for my bachelor's degree, then eventually, taking a long meandering path, eventually got my Ph.D. from University of Tennessee. And then I had a kid, and that baby kind of forced me to look for a full-time job. And the first job I ever applied for was at Arkansas State University. Again, a long meandering path, but eventually I got an interview and took this position, and I've been here now for 9 years.
Fantastic. Alix, how'd you come to Arkansas State?
So I am originally from Arkansas. I'm from North Little Rock. And I have always also kind of been interested in the natural world, and I went to undergraduate at Rhodes College in Memphis. Not really, I knew I wanted to do science, but I didn't really know where, like, in what field that was going to be in, until I took sort of a class that was based on ecology in the natural world. Mm-hmm. And that kind of like sprung my interest in, I can do this for the rest of my life within science. And my undergraduate advisor introduced me to Dr. Boves. I think it was my senior year that we met. And I was kind of looking for graduate programs. I knew I wanted to continue my studies in the sciences. And I had been involved in an undergraduate research project on blood parasites of birds. And so I knew that I was sort of interested in all of that, kind of understanding how birds worked in our world and their interactions with parasites and things. And so Thon and I met, and we hit it off, and I ended up getting my master's here in 27. I was here from 2014 to 2017.
Right.
And then I decided to take a research lab manager position in Texas for a couple years, and knew that I wanted to come back for my PhD, and kind of looked all around at different PhD programs and decided that Arkansas State was the best place for me to come back and get my degree. And so I've been here working on my PhD since 2019.
And you're getting close.
Getting closer.
Yeah. So here pretty soon we'll call you Dr. Matthews, but you're pretty close to that.
Yeah.
Dr. Boves, I wanted to ask about the Bird Observatory. How did the Bird Observatory get started?
So we started the Bird Observatory in 2016, I believe. So it's been around for about 7 years now. And the reason we started it were threefold. One, we wanted to get students close by experience handling birds, being able to catch birds, handle them, and learn the techniques for doing that. And that was both for graduate students and undergraduate students. Secondly, we wanted to have a place nearby that we could actually conduct our research. And so we have used the Bird Observatory for actual scientific research that publications have come out of, including the naming of the only species that I know of that's named after Jonesboro, which is a feather mite called Amarodectes jonesborensis. All of our specimens were collected at the Bird Observatory. And then third, we wanted to have a place where we could have community outreach that would involve students or adults coming to campus and engaging in some of the research with us and learning about birds with us. So for those three reasons, we started the Bird Observatory, and it's been going strong ever since.
And what do you like most, Alix, about the Bird Observatory?
I like that we get to go out in the fall, because a lot of the research that I'm mostly working on is mostly in the spring. And so I don't get out in the field as much during the fall, and the bird observatory, most of our outreach and the time that we spend the most there is during the fall season. So I like to be able to go out in the field during the fall and get to see these birds at a really critical time in their life. For a lot of the birds that we catch are migrating from their breeding grounds to their wintering grounds during the fall. And so that's like a really cool time for us to be out there and seeing birds that may not breed here, but they are passing through. So that's what I like most about it.
So, Dr. Boves, what is it about Arkansas and about this area that makes the Bird Observatory such a unique place? What is it about Arkansas that attracts different birds and species?
So, I mean, Arkansas has a wide variety of natural habitats that the more diversity of habitats you have, the more species you're going to have. And so at the state scale, Arkansas has a lot of different habitats that can harbor a number of different species. But specifically the Bird Observatory, the thing that makes it kind of unique is that within the city, there's not a whole lot of places where you have a decent sized area of natural-ish habitat, like the forest that we work in, where birds can stop over. And so when you have kind of islands of habitat, those places oftentimes concentrate birds. And so the Bird Observatory in the area that we work has both Arkansas state property and then next to it a private woodlot. And because of that, it kind of concentrates those migrants that are passing through. And so during the breeding season, you might not get a ton of things there, but once they start moving on their fall migration, they're going to pick those spots where there is enough resources, in this case the habitat and the insects that they're looking for, and the berries and fruits that they might eat as well. And so that is what makes this spot unique and allows us to do the work we do.
Alix, when you're doing research with birds at the observatory, what are some of the specific things that you all are doing? What are you all looking for in your research?
So it's part of a bigger project.
Sure.
There's multiple projects that we do at the Bird Observatory, but one of the projects that we're involved in is the banding of these birds. And so we will catch the bird, put a unique band on it that's given to us by the U.S. government. And we take measurements of the bird, we will weigh them, we'll take the length of their wing, and that's all put into a larger database. That's people from around the world are putting data in there of the birds that they catch. So it's part of this bigger project to understand the movement of birds, and it's a long-term data set. Dr. Boves might be able to fill in some of the gaps of things that I'm talking about, but that's what we're looking for, is just their measurements. And for my project specifically, one of my projects is looking at the ectosymbionts that live on these birds. So we're also counting the number of feather mites that we find on these different birds and collecting them. As Thon kind of alluded to, we've collected mites that have been used for scientific publications, and we've discovered new species of mites at the Bird Observatory. So there's a lot of different projects that are part of long-term research projects there.
Anything else you'd like to add on that, Dr. Boves?
Yeah, so just elaborating a little further on Alix's point about the banding. When we catch a bird and we put a unique band on it, anyone else in the world that recaptures that bird will be able to tell where that bird came from. And any bird we catch that came from somewhere else, we would be able to tell where that bird came from. And so you can get all sorts of potentially really neat information about movements of birds over long, long distances. And we can also see all sorts of different things about physiology. These birds are preparing to migrate, and so we can look at their health and how much fat they're putting on, which is the primary energy source they use when they're migrating. And so we can see these processes occurring in real time as these birds are preparing to migrate, or while they are in the midst of migration. And all that data becomes available to any researcher that wants to use it, again, as Alix mentioned, around the world.
And the benefits for that is just, I guess, learning species or learning trends or those kinds of things?
Yep, yeah, and so we can use the data that we collect, not just us, but all the other bird banders that are out there around the U.S. and beyond, to understand how populations are changing, how movement might be changing with things like climate change, how health or condition of birds might be trending in one direction or the other, and then we can use that information to understand why some species might be declining, some species might be increasing, and then hopefully the goal would be to then try to find solutions to any problems that we can detect from those data.
So I want to ask both of you about how do you all catch birds out there? What's the process that's involved in that?
So we use specifically a type of net called mist nets. And mist nets, as their name suggests, look like mist. So birds do not see them. They are flying through the forest unaware, and they run into one of these nets. Now, we run into the nets ourselves, even when we know they're there, so it just tells you that these are really fine mesh nets that they just don't detect. We do use some lures as well sometimes if there's certain species that we are hoping to capture. And the lures usually consist of sounds the birds may make, and those birds will hear those sounds and they will consider them to have some meaning to them, whether it means that there's a predator nearby, whether it means there's food nearby. And so we use sounds of birds that we know produce specific messages that other birds can recognize, and then we can attract them into the nets in that way as well.
So have you all taken audio recorders out into the field to be able to record sounds?
Yeah, we have. We've kind of recorded, well, and other people have done the same, so we take recordings from online, and Thon has his DJ booth set up in his office where he will kind of put the sound bits together of different angry bird sounds to create these tracks of really upset birds that will really bring in a lot of birds that we're trying to capture, but also of if we're specifically targeting a species, we have sound bites of those species as well. So yeah, we've done that, and we've also recorded our own sounds of birds if we're recognizing a good sound, a potentially good sound bite, we can record that and put that on a track.
Y'all have got tracks of tweets, basically. I mean, y'all do that. I mean, you're the spin master, basically.
You can call me that.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. I'm sure people will probably try and do that too. All right, we'll take a break. Associate Professor of Ecology, Dr. Thon Boves, and a Ph.D. student in Molecular Biosciences, Alix Matthews, joins me here today on A-State Connections. We come back, we'll continue this great conversation right after this break.
ASU-TV, shows like Red Wolf Roundtable, ASU-TV News, West Side Football, and more. Gain real-life experience while doing what you love. Get involved with ASU-TV today.
Here to deliver the latest news on A-State sports, ranging from football, basketball, baseball, and more.
I'm your host, Tristan Harlan, alongside your other host, Cooper Melder.
Red Wolf Roundtable is your local sports source.
Tune in to Red Wolf Roundtable to get your fix on sports talk and news.
At Arkansas State, we want you to go. Go where learning soars, takes flight, and rockets ahead. Go for experiences, internships, and scholarships. We want you to go. Become A-State Maine. Are you ready to go? Go.astate.edu for details.
Live from the ASU-TV studios in the School of Media and Journalism, this is A-State Connections.
And welcome back to A-State Connections on KASU and ASU-TV. Joining me today is Associate Professor of Ecology, Dr. Thon Boves, and Ph.D. student in Molecular Biosciences, Alix Matthews. We continued talking about the Bird Observatory at Arkansas State University. And so I want to ask you, what's been the most unique bird that you all have spotted at the observatory?
So, very good question. Is that for me or for
Yeah,
okay. I'll go first.
either one. Yeah,
jump in.
absolutely.
So we do both banding and capturing of birds, and then we also just observe birds that are still wild and not captured there. So we could have kind of two answers. But I'll start with ones that we've actually caught. One bird that we've caught there that I have never even seen in the state of Arkansas anywhere is a Bell's vireo. I mean, they do exist in the state of Arkansas, but we were very surprised when we caught the Bell's vireo at that station because it's really not the right habitat, it's not really the right part of the state, and it was just a really unusual species to capture there. And the second one I'll mention is one that that aren't really unusual overall, but having them on campus is pretty cool, and those are rusty blackbirds. And rusty blackbirds are a really rapidly declining species that we're still not entirely sure what's been causing their decline, and we can have big flocks of them sometimes at the bird observatory. We never caught a rusty blackbird because we don't set up the nets during the time of the year they're here, but they use that spot pretty regularly, so it's pretty cool to have them there.
Alix, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, one of the coolest birds that I think that we've caught is called a yellow-bellied flycatcher. This is part of a group of species that is really difficult to tell apart just by looking at it. And so you have to take really fine measurements. And so we sat there with the bird, taking all these different measurements of more than just like the wing that we normally do, but of the bill, of a number of other of measurements that we had to take in order to identify this bird as a yellow-bellied flycatcher. So that was really exciting, just to kind of have that mystery in our hand and then be able to uncover that. And one of my favorite birds at the bird observatory that we haven't caught, I think we've tried, but was the green heron. There's a few little ponds, which also aren't super rare, but I just get excited when they're around. But there's these small ponds kind of in the bird observatory, and it likes to hang out over there. I don't think we saw it this year, but last year.
It's pretty dry.
Yeah.
So Alix, whenever you're able to see those birds that you just haven't seen, because some you're going to see a lot, but then you see some rare ones. What are your thoughts when you're able to see those?
I get super excited. I start to think about, okay, how does this bird, where is it normally? I kind of immediately go to its range, its normal range map, and where does it breed? Is it migrating through here, or is it coming to stay for the winter? So I just get really excited in thinking about the biology of the bird itself, of that species.
Dr. Boves says we near the end of the fall migration, which birds frequent the A-State campus in the wintertime?
So yeah, we'll get a kind of an influx of northern breeders that will then spend the winter here, and so species that will breed and spend the summer all the way up in northern Canada or in Alaska will then come down to Arkansas to spend the winter. And so some of the cool species that we get here in the winter are a species of warbler called a yellow-rumped warbler, and in the winter and during fall migration, we'll get huge numbers of yellow-rumped warblers, which you can identify from the bright yellow patch that's on the lower back, which we call the rump. And so those are one of my favorites. Then we'll also get one of my favorite sounding birds on Earth. They don't sing a ton in the winter, but they do a little bit, and that's a winter wren. And winter wrens, again, breed much farther north, but they have an amazing sound. It sounds like a babbling brook. And so it's just it's a ton of high-pitched twitters and tweets that all get mixed together in a jumble that is really hard to explain. I'm probably doing a terrible job, but check it out, winter wren. Look it up and listen to one, because we'll get them here in the winter, and occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll hear them sing even in the winter.
Yeah, the babbling brook was really a good way to be able to describe that, good. So that worked out great. I wanted to ask you all about, in the pandemic, bird watching became something. Everyone wanted to kind of go out into the wild and to be able to do that, just to kind of get out into nature. And so there was a lot of people who are out filming, doing photography, and many other things. And people are still doing that. It's something that really has kind of caught on. Tell us about, about why that's so popular in Arkansas, Dr. Boves.
So it's not a mystery to me because I've watched birds for a long time, but I remember when I first started watching birds, like Alix kind of mentioned, there's adrenaline, there is a rush of excitement that you feel when you see a bird for the first time. And when you first start birding, every single bird is new. And so I'm guessing that people probably were feeling those same feelings that I did when I was 10 and 11 years old when I first started bird watching. But when you see a bird for the first time through a good pair of binoculars in particular, you suddenly realize, like, whoa, now I know why there's people that do this sort of thing. You might have been like, well, what's the big deal about watching birds? But you look through some binoculars at a brilliantly colored bird, and it's really hard to not be amazed, impressed, fascinated, and wanting to see what that next bird might look like as well. And so it's not a surprise to me that people got interested in it. And to me, it's a surprise it took them that long to figure it out. But I'm really excited that there's more bird watchers now. There's all sorts of really cool research that shows that it's not just a fun activity. It's actually really good for mental health. It's really even good for physical health. And getting out in nature and spending time watching birds. Everyone should do it.
Which kind of leads to the community outreach aspect of the Bird Observatory. And Alex, I know one thing that you really have enjoyed is being able to get school groups out there to be able to kind of work with kids about that. Well, tell us, about that, about how you all work with schools and how you all are working with the public to be able to continue with the community outreach base that Arkansas State has at the Bird Observatory.
We have an avian ecology club that we send out sort of the schedule of when we're opening the bird observatory for banding specifically, but the observatory is open, year round. You can walk over there anytime and go look for birds and watch birds. And sometimes you'll see cars, lined up along the railroad, and people will wonder, well, what's going on over there? And they'll just come drop in sometimes. But it is really good for the community to come out there and to see these birds close up, because as Don was saying, if you're watching birds, you may not get like that good of a look at them, and so it's like, what's the big deal? But once you either get a good pair of binoculars or see a bird in the hand, it makes a huge difference in terms of like your appreciation and awe of these organisms. In terms of the community, the students and Thon and other professors, they'll tell their friends about, we're opening the banding station, you can come out and come check things out. But in terms of, so that kind of gets sort of the adult group. But in terms of the school groups, Thon may be able to better answer that as he's more plugged into the elementary schools here.
Yeah, it's mostly word of mouth. Different teachers hear about both homeschooled and formal normal school students, and they contact me and they ask, hey, can we come out and see them? Or they ask sometimes, can we come to their class as well? Obviously, that's not quite as elaborate of an experience for the students, but sometimes it's easier for us to go to them, and so we can go to them. Can't bring live birds to them, but we can bring stuffed birds that we have in our museum as well. And so we do some outreach where we actually go to the schools, but any teachers out there listening, or any teachers that are interested that want to schedule a visit, get in touch with me, and I'm easy to find on the internet, and we would love to have you out there. We had a class, it was actually a gifted and talented class from a couple schools in Jonesboro out there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks.
And we had about 30 students out there. And it was so cool to see the kids, how excited they got every time we caught a bird, or even just talking about birds.
Every time a bird flew by.
Every time a bird flew by, they're like, there's a bird, and we couldn't even. It was pretty amazing. So yeah, it's a great time, and I think we got really good reviews
and really good questions too. The kids ask like really either in-depth questions or really obscure questions. You're like, well, actually, that is a good question. It's not something that most people ask.
So give us an example of one of those questions that you would hear. You're like, man, that's a really good question from students.
Well, coming from like an 8-year-old, they want to know, well, how do you identify that same individual bird again? And we have to explain like, oh, we put this metal band on them, and it's got a unique number. And because most people just see that if a bird's banded, they may not realize that there's a unique code on that band for that individual bird only. So I thought that some of those were interesting, coming from really young kids that I don't know. I just thought that was impressive that they were asking those type of questions.
I think they were asking questions like, which bird has the most feathers also? And so they were asking like pretty
Nice.
like it was like, I think I know the answer, but don't quote me on this.
Yeah.
So they were definitely stumping us with their bird trivia questions.
You know, so that is rewarding right there, just being able to know, because they could be your next students.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Boves.
According to the parents that I talked to afterwards, a lot of them said it was the greatest field trip they've ever been on in their life.
Well, that's
Of
great.
course, they haven't gone on a field trip for 2 years, so they probably don't remember a field trip before that.
Well, but there's a lot of opportunities for the public to kind of go out. If they want more information on the work that you all are doing, Dr. Boves, how do they get a hold of you?
The best way is through email. So my email address is tboves@astate.edu. They can also, if they look me up on the internet, they can find my phone number to my office. We have a Facebook page that our lab, my research lab keeps up, and people can send me messages through there. I think all those ways would be perfectly fine,
Yeah, sounds good. Before I let you all run, Alix, thank you for joining us here today. Anything else you'd like to add before I let you all run?
No, I just thank you for letting us, or giving us this opportunity, and we do hope that people come out to the banding station. We just shut down for the fall a few weeks ago, but we'll be starting back up in next fall. So, and like I said, it's open year round, so anybody can go, and we can take people out there, and we'd love to have you.
Very good. Dr. Boves?
I second all the things Alix mentioned. The A-State Bird Observatory is on Google Maps even now, so it's like a legitimate place that if you look it up, you'll find an actual location. So if you're ever wondering where it is and you want to go check it out, look up A-State Bird Observatory on Google Maps or contact me. And I'll add one other thing. Even though the Bird Observatory is kind of a place, it's also kind of our lab. So we do a lot of other research on birds. And if people are interested in getting involved in other ways also, or students that are watching this, you can come out and see the other research we do, which is all over the place, not just on campus, but in agricultural areas around us, in a variety of areas nearby that are natural and semi-natural areas that people are welcome to join.
A lot of areas in Arkansas to do that. Yeah. So thank you both for joining us here today on A-State Connections. Well, that'll do it for this edition of A-State Connections, as I want to thank my guests who joined us today, Dr. Boves and Alix Matthews. Also want to thank Instructor of Creative Media Production, Galen Perkins, and his amazing students who are behind the scenes running the show as always. Thanks to engineers Derek Herring and Clayton Holderfield for their help, and I want to thank you for watching as well. Don't forget, A-State Connections is heard every Saturday morning at 11 on 91.9 FM, KASU, and streaming on the KASU mobile app. And I'll see you right here next Wednesday, 1:30 for another edition of A-State Connections. So long, everybody.